From Fox 8 Sports, this is the Overtime Podcast.
From the Fox 8 studios in New Orleans, this is the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Fazende, riding shotgun as he does each and every podcast. Is Andre Johnson
Jr.
Do not forget the JR at the end of that name. It's very important to remember the Junior. Before we get into today's content, be sure to like, share, rate, and review. If you are watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button to get the bell notification for when we drop that fire content. And don't forget to drop a few comments for us if you want to get involved in some of the discussion. Today, we are back. It is a beautiful, gorgeous Friday in the city. I walked outside, had a nice breeze. It felt good. Good vibes as we head into the weekend. But, Andre, there's a little bit of panic right now. There's a little bit of anxiety in the fan base right now and maybe inside the organization. I wasn't there today, but that injury report came out. And it's not that it's a long list. It's just a very important list. So before we get into that, how you feeling on this Friday?
You know, I'm feeling good. It's hot in the city. It hasn't rained like crazy in a while. It feels good right now. Had some Waffle House to start the day off. So, you know, when you start the day off at Waffle House, you can't have a bad day.
I love me some Waffle House. Every time I go down to Biloxi, I stop at the Waffle House on the way out. You know, me and the wife every now and then. But that's a different story for a different day. For this day, we will get into the Saints' health situation. Every team is dealing with health situations, but the Saints have been hit pretty hard. We alluded to it on Wednesday's podcast. So it only got more concerning today. I am certainly less confident than what I was 24 hours ago, and I can't say I was incredibly confident 24 hours ago. The Saints injury report. Andre, why don't you read it off?
Yeah, that Saints offense is hurting right now, literally and figuratively. Today, that injury report coming out, the guys who are questionable: running back Alvin Kamara, wide receiver Cedric Wilson, and a guy who got injured today at practice, wide receiver Chris Olave, a new name on the injury report. And then the guys who have already been ruled out, you've got another wide receiver in A.T. Perry. You've got offensive guard Cesar Ruiz. And then on the defensive side, you've got arguably your best player in Demario Davis. And that's not even mentioning Eric McCoy, who was recently put on IR. So, you know, you've got two big offensive linemen that are going to be out. Your running back is dealing with a hip and a ribs injury, and your number 1, your number 3, and your number 4 wide receivers are all banged up going into a matchup against your biggest rival. So with all that being said, with the guys who will play on Sunday, Sean, how do you think that they match up, and where do they match up best against the Dirty Birds?
Well, you know, it took us a while to kind of prepare for this because you really have to, when you have that many frontline guys out, you have to really start to look and examine and see where this team matches up best to Atlanta, a team they know quite well, despite the fact they have a new quarterback and a new head coach. First off, no Demario Davis for the first time ever in his career due to injury. No Demario Davis since he's been here. I mean, obviously that's a major blow. I mean, that is a major blow. And the fact that it was a hamstring tightness that happened in the game and he hasn't been able to do anything since, to me, that is somewhat concerning for a player at that position at that age. A couple hamstring issues have popped up here with the team, Chris Olave being another one. Olave hurting the hamstring in practice, it's like, man, that is a massive tough break. Because the same thing happened with Cedric Wilson. He was running a route in the section we were able to watch at practice yesterday, and he had to exit practice early as well. So those are your perimeter guys. You only have Shaheed left, maybe Mason Tipton left. Well, not maybe. You do have Mason Tipton. You're probably going to talk about Bub Means. Maybe you bring up Equinemius St. Brown from the practice squad. Am I forgetting the name? Am I forgetting a player or a receiver? I mean, obviously you still have Rashid Shaheed. So that's how you handle that situation there. And then obviously you talk about no Ruiz, no Eric McCoy, and, you know, you look at the mixing and the matching, and, you know, is it Shane Lemieux at center? Is it Lucas Patrick at center? Is it more of a let's keep 3 out of the 5 the same, so let's keep Lucas Patrick at left guard, and obviously you have your 2 tackles, and you just worry about 2 switches as opposed to 3 switches, and if that's the case, is it Lemieux? Is it I guess he'd be the only guy if that was in that scenario. If it's Lemieux or Patrick, and then at right guard, is it Landon Young? Is it Aliudo? Or is it? I don't know. That's Nick Saldivari. We don't know. I mean, there's a lot of different combinations you can go with when it comes to that offensive line. But I do feel a little bit better that they will be better this week. They won't be great. I mean, they won't be great. They're not going to be as like they were the first 2 weeks of the season because obviously they're depleted. But I feel marginally better that they can do better than they did last week for two reasons. A, they practiced all week, and B, Atlanta's front is good, but they're not as good as Philly. So, and they got they've had some time to prepare. So I feel okay about that. I don't love that matchup, but I feel slightly better about that because they've practiced for the entire week, which whatever combination they chose to use, because Ruiz has not practiced once all week. But back to the question at hand is, where are the Saints' best matchups? One name on that list, but will play, is Taysom Hill.
Yeah.
I mean, he's the guy. He is the guy this week. Do they need him? I mean, do they need him back in a game like this? His versatility, and not just from an information gathering standpoint that Kubiak has used him as the first couple weeks, but from a production standpoint, the production has to be there this week and use that versatility to lead to more production. And check the guy's history versus Atlanta, whether it's passing, whether it's receiving, whether it's rushing. Taysom Hill has had some of his best games against the Atlanta Falcons. So if they're going to get it, like last week, a game where if Philly crowded the line of scrimmage, had the bare front, did the 6-1 or however you want to call it, Taysom is a guy that can run the football from the quarterback position with the extra blocker. So that obviously becomes a luxury that you could certainly lean on with that extra blocker. And is this a game where maybe he throws in the game? You never know. Yeah. But all those options are certainly on the table with Taysom Hill. So I think this is a Taysom Hill game. So that's matchup number one that I think you got to look at, and I think the Saints will certainly like. Alvin Kamara, we know he's going to be that's going to be the Atlanta's number one priority is take away 41. Nothing Alvin Kamara ain't used to the rest of his entire career here. He's probably good. If he's not one, he's 1A when it comes to, all right, who do we stop on the Saints first? So Alvin Kamara is still available. I know he's banged up, but he's available. He's coming off a game with a lot of touches, so he can't go quite as high as he did a week ago, but nonetheless, he's someone that you can certainly use. And if he can't run the ball, maybe he can catch the ball out of the backfield and be effective. We know Rashid Shaheed. I mentioned Mason Tipton. And how about this? Can number 83 step up? Mm-hmm. Can number 83 rise to the occasion? Been a little quiet. All right, this would be a perfect time for him to reintroduce himself to everyone here in the fan base, to this new offense, a tight end-friendly offense, for him to step up and emerge as a playmaker. I would love to see Juwan Johnson have a Tampa Bay-type game like he had last year towards the end of the season when his team needs him in Week 4 because they're going to need him. That's on offense. Did you have any? What do you feel offensively best matchup-wise?
Offensively, I also said Taysom, but I put a little asterisk next to it because normally heading into this game, I would say AK and Taysom are where you need to win the game, especially with your receivers banged up. But the problem with that is, with that offensive line, I think that makes it very difficult for them. If you have your normal offensive line, I think you could, and AK's banged up. So you gave him 29 touches last week. I don't think you can give a guy who's dealing with a hip injury and rib injuries another 30 touches again against a defense that can be as physical as Atlanta's can. So, if anything, my key to the game is Jamal Williams. Because you're really going to need Jamal Williams to spell AK. I don't think you can give him 30 touches, like I said. If you can bring that down to maybe 17, 18 touches, give Jamal Williams 10 to 12 touches, and Jamal Williams can be effective, I think that's a good path to you winning this game, because I think AK and Taysom are going to have a tough time seeing how depleted this offensive line is.
But are you confident in that matchup with Jamal Williams? I can understand why you would have to lean on him, but I don't know if I would be confident that that would be my best matchup.
To be honest with you.
I like the idea of Taysom. I called it Talvin Hamara back a couple of years ago because those were the two guys. It was the 25-touch rule I came up with. Both those guys have to combine for 25 touches in a game. I think Kamara passed that up by himself last week.
Yeah.
But I think I would love for that to be the case, and maybe they do get. Maybe that is a game where Jamal Williams can be the guy, and like Juwan Johnson or Mason Tipton. But I don't know if the Saints can go into a game plan thinking, all right, that's how we win. I mean, I think at some point the matchup is the matchup, and Taysom and Kamara certainly provide that. Is this a game where another receiver could step up? I mean, that's a really good secondary that they're playing as well.
One thing you can say is there's probably not a lot of film and information on Mason Tipton.
Yeah.
Mason Tipton is a guy who kind of came out of nowhere this year. He didn't play in the preseason at all, and he hasn't had any big, meaningful role in the first 3 games of this season. So if you're Atlanta, you probably don't know too much about Mason Tipton. You know what Rashid Shaheed wants to do. He wants to get behind the defense. If you bring up, if Cedric Wilson is able to play, you know what Cedric Wilson does. You've seen Equinemius St. Brown if he gets called up. You've seen him play several seasons of football. But Mason Tipton is kind of the unknown. So if there is anybody who could step up and have that impact this week, it might be him.
And look, the Saints, I mean, I talked to him. He's gonna be our Sunday sit down in the Fox 8 Live tailgate, so be on the lookout for that. He's confident.
Yeah.
And that's a guy the Saints, I mean, you never see an undrafted rookie get injured in camp, miss half of camp and most of the preseason, and still make the team based off of the first 8 or 9 practices. And he was able to do that. He impressed them that much.
And play.
And this is his opportunity to basically reward that confidence in him. And he's a guy, like we said before, if you split the snaps up or you count the snaps, he's been the third guy. So, but again, if Olave can't go, we should say he's questionable. But if Olave can go, it's great. But if he can't go, I mean, your 2 becomes your 1, your 3 becomes your 2, and your 4 becomes your 3, or whatever the case may be. So you're talking about a situation that they're going to have to adjust with a depleted wide receiver core. Other side of the ball.
That's where I feel good. Offensively, I don't have
First thing I'm telling my guys in the meeting, if I'm DA, we need y'all big time this week. This is your game. I know all the offense is getting all the headlines lately, but we need you, dogs, to win this game this week for us. Even without Demario Davis, defense, y'all need to carry us. We know DeMario's not there. We know he's a quarterback of the defense, but they've got several playmakers that can step up. Pete Werner, do you slide over? Does he bump over to be the mic? Probably. We paid you, man. We paid you.
Yeah.
You got to be the guy. Willie Gay, we brought you here for a reason. Here's your opportunity. Now, who's the third linebacker if they get in a 3-linebacker set? Is it Anthony Orji? Is it DeMarco Jackson? Do they bring up like Jonathan Abram and let him be kind of the box safety hybrid linebacker type? That's certainly possible based off of certain sets. Wouldn't be surprised if that were the case. And there's this. You're down 2 linemen, but so are they.
Yep.
They're starting center, and I believe they're right tackle, if I'm not mistaken.
Their right tackle,
They're
Caleb
right
McGarry, and their center, Drew Dahlman.
So the offensive line concerns have been canceled out on both sides of the ball. And I think the Saints have a better pure pass rush than the Falcons do. They've invested a lot up front. This is the time to earn your money. We saw Carl Granderson go off last week. Yep. Hopefully he can do the same. And, you know, we were talking about Chase Young on Game Plan Wednesday. I think Chase Young's fine. He's gonna get a couple sacks eventually. He's disrupting, but he's already taken over as the main pass rushing guy, opposite of Carl Granderson. It's those 2 guys right now. So this is a game where your pass rush against their offensive line should be a major, major advantage for you. And then finally, I love the matchup of Marshawn Lattimore, Paulson Adebo, Alante Taylor, and I guess in some instances, Kool-Aid McKinstry versus Drake London, Darnell Mooney, and Ray McLeod. I know Mooney has been fantastic with big plays, and London has sort of found himself a little bit the last couple of weeks after, I guess, somewhat of a so-so start to his career. But I still think down in and down out, the Saints secondary as a whole, to me, is better than their wide receiver core. Now, Kyle Pitts concerns me. Here's why. Not because of what he's done, but what he's capable of. But sometimes underachievers scare me because there's always that fear that at some point he can figure it out.
Yep.
And we saw what a dynamic tight end did to them last week. So that is still a little bit of a vulnerability for me on the defensive side of the ball. So that's where I'm at with it. Obviously, the deck stacks heavily on the defensive side of the ball. It's a game they're going to have to win. Would love for them to keep those opportunistic ways that they have. Was it 7 takeaways the first 3 games? Keep that going this week. Kirk is a good quarterback, and he's probably the best at reading defenses that they face, but he's vulnerable to turnovers, and they have got to take advantage when they get those opportunities. So Saints defense, there's your best matchup right there.
Absolutely. And the first thing I wrote is the first thing you said, and that's the defensive line. Like you mentioned, Atlanta's D-line or offensive line is just as banged up as the Saints. They're also missing their center. Is their center Eric McCoy? No, but they are missing the guy in the middle, the quarterback, so to speak, of their offensive line. Their right tackle is out. That's a big deal as well. And you've got Carl Granderson, who you could argue has been the best defensive player for the Saints all season. You've got Chase Young, who may not be making the loud, big plays. He doesn't have 6 sacks so far this season. He doesn't have Alontae Taylor sack numbers, but he's been making plays here and there. It's not like he's getting completely shut out.
That fourth down stop was great.
Exactly. Yep. And then there's another name that's back this week that hasn't played all season, and that's Colin Saunders.
Talk to him.
Colin Saunders. The Saints have been getting shredded in the run game, especially last week by Saquon Barkley. You bring back Colin Saunders, the defensive tackle, in the middle of that line. I think that has a big impact on their rush defense that's been so good throughout the years. And then Brian Brzee, a guy in his second year who has been getting better. We've seen Brian Brzee take a step forward, especially as a pass rusher, getting to the quarterback and making their life not fun for 3.5 hours. So I really like the Saints D-line against that banged-up O-line in Atlanta. And my biggest concern as well, like you said, is Kyle Pitts, especially I think that's where you miss Demario Davis. Demario Davis is kind of that quarterback in the middle of the field. He had a really good play in pass coverage against Dallas down the sideline. And when it comes to kind of keeping Kyle Pitts in line, I think that's where Demario really could have played a big role potentially. Now you're asking Pete Werner and Willie Gay to step in and do that. It's not that they can't, but you might have a little more confidence in slowing down Kyle Pitts if Demario was there. But you mentioned it up front. I love how they are up front against that offensive line, and I would definitely take the Saints cornerbacks. I think the Saints secondary is one of the best, if not the best, secondaries in the entire NFL, going against Drake London, another guy who you could argue has underperformed since he's been drafted in the first round. Ray McLeod and a Tulane guy and Darnell Mooney. I'm definitely taking the Saints secondary over them. So, yeah, it's going to be up to the defense to win this game. Offense might only give you 10 to 17 points, and the defense is going to have to hold tight.
I'm very curious because now Kubiak goes into a game with the mindset of, okay, more than likely, given the way the Eagles played us, I'm going to get a loaded line of scrimmage. They're going to try to take the run game away from me first. How quickly do I counter that? What is my counter? Do you throw them off completely with throwing the ball right off the gate? Who are you going to throw it to? I go back to, I remember that Atlanta Falcons Saints game. It might have been on Thanksgiving, where Drew threw 4 touchdowns to 4 undrafted rookies, or 4 undrafted. I don't know if they were all rookies, but they were 4 undrafted guys. It was the ultimate, like, Drew is he just raises everybody up type situation. You would love to see a situation like that with Derek Carr. So, yeah, that's the chess match. But as we sit here right now, I'm not going to lie to you and say I feel great about this game, because I don't. I don't feel great about this game right now with the way the injuries have certainly played itself out. I understand the history, and I do think the Saints have played better than the Falcons the last, if you just add up the entirety of the season. But I think all things being equal, I do think the Saints have some significant injuries to overcome, and it could impact them in this game.
I agree, and it's the area that I really think Clint Kubiak can impress a lot of people is, we talk about his creativity. Just how creative can you get with the pieces you have? Maybe you do a lot of 2 running back sets with AK and Jamal. Maybe you motion AK out wide. Give the defense something to think about. If you're going to stack the box against AK, what if you motion them into the slot before the play? That's going to throw them off. Give them some looks, because this Clint Kubiak offense in New Orleans, it's still, you mentioned over the last few podcasts, other teams kind of getting film on Kubiak and the things he likes to do. He's only scratching the surface, I'm sure, of that playbook as a whole. So, giving them looks that they haven't seen so far, sending Alvin Kamara out, sending Taysom in different locations. We haven't seen, Taysom throw a pass so far this season. Letting Taysom maybe get a little active in that. You really got to dig deep in your bag for this game, because your offensive line is going to be suspect. You're going to have to get the ball out quick, and you're going to have to keep the defense on their heels and not on their toes.
What do you think the combination is, offensive line? Because the more I think about it, the more I think they're going to go like 3 out of 5 the same as opposed to 2 out of 5 being the same. So I think Patrick ends up at left guard this week.
Really?
That's the more I think about it. But, I mean, I could be wrong there. And then if that were the case, what do you turn to? Is it Udo or is it Landon Young? And if that were the case, is it Lemieux? I don't even know who else could even play center other than Lemieux in that situation.
I don't think you have anybody else who can.
So the more I think about that, the more I think that would be the best plan of attack. I don't know if they're going to do that. I would think that's the best plan of attack, just in terms of, okay, I got 2 guys out of place or I got 3 guys out of place, and if you know anything about math, 3 is higher than 2. So 3 might be better to have 3 out of the 5 being in a spot. And I do think they'll be better. But there is some concern there. They're how could there not be? How could there not be any concern there? And special teams, look, I think they have a good kicker, but he doesn't have quite the. Matter of fact, I could think Groupie may have a longer range than. How do you pronounce his name again? Young Wei Koo, who is a very good kicker, but he's about 55 and in. So maybe you have an advantage there. I like the way Hayball's been coughing, cornering those punts. He's had a lot of opportunities too, because they're not a lot, but last week they had a couple because of Dennis Allen's natural tendency to have the shorter pooch punts as opposed to longer field goals. And I wonder if that plays a role this week. Okay, I'm limited in what I can do offensively. If I get a scoring opportunity, even if it's somewhat risky, it's worth the risk to take it. And if I'm presented with a 58-yard field goal opportunity middle of the second quarter and it's 7-7, and it might give them good field position, but I might be able to go up 10-7, is it worth it? I would say I hope that's the case, because I need to see DA kind of pivot in that regard.
Yeah, in 2024, the way kickers are making long field goals, I feel like if you have a kicker that you don't feel confident in at least attempting a 55-plus, I'm not talking about 67, but he passed on a 57 or 58-yard field goal last week?
Yeah.
If you don't feel confident in your kicker enough to at least attempt it, then what are we doing at that position? You know, so I would like to see him maybe be more aggressive in trying those field goals out instead of maybe punting in those situations. And to answer your offensive line question, I don't know. I still feel like Lucas Patrick is the pick at center. I was actually cutting some video of him for our newscast today, and I was looking back at some training camp stuff, and I saw Lucas Patrick practicing at center in training camp.
He played a lot. He was a second-team center a lot.
So Lucas Patrick is a guy who, I mean, this is a situation the Saints did prepare for. If Eric McCoy goes down, who's your backup guy? And in training camp, it was Lucas Patrick. Derek Carr mentioned after the game, he said, losing Eric McCoy today after the Philadelphia game is tough, but Lucas and I have had a lot of repetition together. So just off of simple familiarity for a position that's the most important position on the offensive line, you could argue, I think Lucas Patrick has got to slide there. And then your left guard and your right guard, I think that's going to have to be Aliudo and either Saldivari or Landon Young on that left side.
So Patrick at center.
Aliudo at right guard. And then I think Saldivari or Landon Young goes to left guard.
Okay. Yeah, Saldivari's got to factor into the mix here.
He was the starter.
What's up with that? Like he's got to factor into the mix here.
Yeah, at one point he was your go-to left guard.
And so you got Penning. I'm writing here. Fuaga and Patrick. You know those 3 are going to be on the field.
Yes.
Okay. Who are your other 2?
For me, it's going to be Aliudo at right guard, and I would play Saldivari at left guard.
Saldivari left guard. For me, it would probably be Young, and then Lemieux is a veteran. How long has he been in the league? He's been in the league a few years. Yeah. I might go Lemieux and Young with that, and just kind of stack it. I can understand. I don't think Udo impressed him last week. And Saldivari, it's like he's become the forgotten guy.
That's the thing about Saldivari. I want to see something out of you, Saldivari. We drafted you. It's not like he was a 7th-round pick. They picked him in, the 4th round last year?
Yeah.
And we've given you opportunities in practice. He was the number 1 guy heading into training camp. In mini camp, it was Nick Saldivari who was taking the first-team reps.
Oh, yeah. We had podcasts
at left
about
guard.
it. Yeah.
Exactly. And somehow he fell to 3rd string in between the end of mini camp and the end of training camp. We drafted you last year in the 4th round. I want to see something from you.
Yeah.
This line is banged up. Left guard is open. If you move Saldiveri to center, step in and show me why you need to be playing. And that's kind of how Dennis Allen had been talking throughout the training camp period is we want to see guys step up and say, hey, this is my job and I'm going to prove it to you.
Well, what happened with Saldiveri was he was the guy for the start of camp. Then you started to see Lucas Patrick get more, but he was still splitting those reps. What was happening was Lucas Patrick would get the first 2 reps, and then he would step out because he was the second team center, as I said. And then Saldiveri got hurt, and I think it's the second training camp he got hurt. And in that window, other guys stepped up and filled in, and that's who they apparently trust in the situation. Real quick, we only got about 20 seconds here, 30 seconds here. Oh, a minute and a half. Okay, good. We got some time.
Yeah.
How you feeling? This is a toss-up for me.
I feel very confident in that Saints defense. I think the Saints win. I think the Saints go into Atlanta. It's still an intense rivalry matchup. I think they win. Now, I think it's going to be very low scoring. I could see the final score maybe being 17-13 Saints, but I'm going to lean on that Saints defense and how they match up against the Falcons.
I think a takeaway seals it is the difference, and you just hope if you're the Saints, you're the team with the key takeaway. And if you're Derek Carr, take care of the football like you've been doing, because I think that could be a major issue. If you all of a sudden start turning the ball over, then there could be a problem if you're the Saints. So it's a toss-up, but I'm not by no means do I think they can't win. I think they can go to Atlanta and get a victory. And elsewhere in the NFL, any matchup you're looking forward to?
The matchup I'm looking forward to is, I'm looking around the NFC South. I know that Carolina, a team that nobody was talking about, they've got former Saint Andy Dalton. They're playing the Cincinnati Bengals, who are 0-3 right now. I know the Bengals start slow, but who saw them being 0-3?
Right.
Potentially going 0-4 to a quarterback that used to be the face of their team.
Yep. For me, it's Bills-Ravens. Sunday night, that's going to be a fantastic matchup. 2 awesome quarterbacks. Josh Allen's playing out of his mind right now. Bills-Ravens, that's going to be the game for me. All right, for Andre Johnson Jr., I am Sean Fazende. We're out of time, so we'll catch you guys next time on Overtime.